Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episodes 137 and 138 of Steven Universe, Lars of the Stars, and Jungle Moon. So with the whole plot line with Steven and Kanye and the tension between their friendship now wrapped up and resolved, it's time to move on to new stories, and today we kinda sorta have a two-parter. I say kinda sorta because the plots are, while kinda being different, do lead into one another, so I'm just going to count it. But either way, yeah. First, let's talk about Lars of the Stars. And in this case, Steven and Connie are going to go see Lars. Connie's excited for this because this is her first official space mission. And Steven's excited because, well, he just wants to check in on Lars and see how he's doing. Especially since the last time he saw Lars, he was holed up on Homeworld with the off-colors. So he wants to be sure he's doing alright. And that's part... And the part of the reason why he's doing it is the part of the reason Steven wants to check in on him is because he has a care package. The care package is full of stuff from Lars's parents, with Steven giving his own, with Steven kind of giving a few things as well, including a pink version of MC Bear, which I kind of find adorable. But yeah, Steven and Connie are excited to do this, and so they end up going through Lion's Mane to go see Lars, though not before Lion does something adorable. But they go through the field and pop out of Lars's head. Only he ain't on Homeworld anymore. He's in space. Specifically, he and the off-colors have stolen a ship known as the Sun Incinerator, a high-class gem warship owned by I guess general in Gem Society known as Emerald. And apparently this is not their first offense. Yeah, it turns out that since Steven last checked in with Lars, he's kind of been off doing his own thing. And while we don't really know all the major details, based on what I can glean from what we hear in the episode, yeah, basically, Lars is now a space outlaw. Basically, what had happened was that with Lars and the off-colors trapped on Homeworld, they began devising ways of getting off of Homeworld, since after all, Lars wants to go home and the off-colors do want to take care of him. And the thing is, the off-colors did know a way off of Homeworld. It's just that they couldn't really take advantage of it because, well, there are various machines on Homeworld that could scan for their gems, and, well, they can't exactly hide them. But then you have Lars, who is not a gem. He's fully organic and can easily just slip right past those things. So, Lars wound up becoming their ace in the hole. He was able to do things that the off-colors couldn't, and, well, basically, from what I can tell, the more adventures they went on, the more confident Lars became, to the point where he essentially became the de facto leader of their group, and they wound up going on various misadventures across the galaxy together, all in an attempt to get back to Earth. They have stolen many ships, they have crossed many gems, and apparently the most recent of their escapades has been that they've crossed the gem general sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied, Emerald, who when Steven and Connie burst onto the scene, she is chewing Lars out via a video feed because this is her ship, which apparently Lars stole after he and the off-colors crashed a shuttle onto a colony that she was on, which she could have owned, but I don't know, wound up coming unannounced to a jubilee that she was throwing, and then afterwards stole her favorite ship. So, she's got just as much reason to hate Lars and the off-colors as anyone. And so she's pretty much just yelling at Lars to give her the ship back, and Lars is pretty much giving her the proverbial middle finger as he tells the off-colors to get to send the ship to hyperspeed so they can get away, which all the off-colors do because it turns out they all have certain roles on the ship, like pilot, navigator, technician, so on and so forth. And like I said, they've done this quite a bit, so they're used to it. So with the Emerald yelling at Lars and his crew, they just blast away at hyperspeed. So yeah, Lars has been very busy, and he's doing very well for himself too, because he's even got new clothes. He's got a cape, a jacket, gloves. He looks like a tried and true captain, and he's definitely changed. He is not the same guy that we last saw him. So he's not the same guy that we saw when we last checked in on him. He's more confident, more somewhat full of himself, but more, I guess I can say, refined. He's basically more sure of himself, and with that And with that bit of self-confidence, he's now more willing to take risks, and with that, we actually see one of Lars's a side of Lars we never saw before. Smart, strategic, actually concerned. And basically, Steven and Connie want to know all the details as they begin asking Lars questions about what had happened since they last saw him, what's all the adventures he's gone on, and Lars just is happy to just do all this, and he says that, yeah, he's proud of all he's accomplished, but he also admits he couldn't have done it on his own. If he didn't have the off-colors with him, he doesn't think he could do any of this. And likewise, the off-colors share that exact same sentiment. They as Rhodonite even admits that without Lars there, they probably wouldn't have been able to do any of the things they could too, since after all, he's technically off of gem radar, because again, organic versus gems. He can slip past the scanners, and since he's their captain, they kind of rely on him. They kind of rely on him quite a bit. So yeah, it's very mutual. Everyone's happy for everyone, but at the end of the day, the end goal is still the same. They basically, Lars and the off-colors are just going on merry space adventures because they're trying to make their way back to Earth so everyone can have a happy ending. Which kind of brings me to another thing that Steven does while he's there, as after he gives Lars his care package, which Lars is very much touched by, as the care package contains new jeans, some favorite pins for his ears, which are skull pins, which he pops in, and every time we see him after this, he's still wearing them. And of course, he still appreciates the MC Bear plush, but basically, questions are asked about what's going on Earth, because Lars is giddy to go back there and catch up with everybody again, and Steven is more than willing to share what's been going on Earth, including everything with Sadie. As Steven ends up pulling up a picture of Sadie on his phone and letting Lars know how she's kind of doing well for herself, which shocks Lars because he was under the impression that she was probably worried about him. But hearing that she's actually doing well, that she quit the Big Donut, and that she's now she's Sadie Killer with the other cool kids acting as being with joining up the cool kids and forming a band with them, she's living her best life, and Steven shows this to Lars, and suddenly his bravado starts to kind of die a little as he looks at the picture, and you can just kind of see the wheels turning in his head. And suddenly Lars doesn't feel as confident anymore, which could not come at a bad time, as warning lights start blaring all over the ship, as apparently something is closing in on everybody. Of course, the crew want to know what the hell is going on, so they want to ask Lars what to do, but Lars is distracted as he starts throwing a pity party. Yeah, it's here where we see Lars kind of backslide a little in character development. Though thankfully, I would argue this is one of the few instances where I think where it can actually be tolerable, because the reason for his backsliding is upset. Mostly because he sees Sadie out there living her best life, going out, hanging out with the cool kids, living a life that Lars kind of wanted when he was on Earth, and he's upset. Somewhat with Sadie, but mostly with himself, as he's like, how is she? I thought she was worried about me, but now she's living the life I always wanted. Is this to get back at me for all the crap I've pulled? Which I'll get to my thoughts on that when I give my thoughts on the episode as a whole. But yeah, Lars is clearly upset by this, as he feels like that he's just being left behind by Sadie, which Steven and Connie immediately throw back in his face, because yeah, they tells Lars, yes, she was worried. She is worried. She's waiting for the day that Lars can come home, but she needs to move on. Life will go on even if Lars isn't there. And part of the reason why Sadie's even doing all this is because she needed something to do to keep her mind off of all the crazy shit that was going on. She needed to have something for herself. She couldn't just be moping around waiting for Lars to come back. That would destroy her. She needed to find something to live for. And as such, yes, while she's happy, she's not doing this because she wants to hurt Lars. She's doing it because she needs it. And the thing is, she still cares about Lars. She still wants him to come home. And at the end of the day, no matter what's happened, they're still friends. And which, as Steven and Connie are giving this whole speech, they immediately kind of go hand in hand. They immediately go hand in hand. Steven's gem starts glowing, and the two fuse into Stevani, who wraps up the speech by saying that friends would never do anything to try and hurt each other, which I like, which I think makes it even better, because this is exemplified by having the previous episode be the one where Steven and Connie finally made up, which what I kind of love here, Steven and Connie formed Stevani to help give Lars a pep talk, but did not form Stevani for Kevin and his stupid party. I love it. It's nice. But yeah, basically the speech plus the sight of seeing Steven and Connie fuse into Stevani does kind of reignite that fire in Lars as he realizes, yeah, you're right, I do need to get over myself here. He does thank Stevani, but the warning lights are still blaring in the ship, so the sun incinerator gets cut off by a much larger ship, which Emerald is piloting. And yeah, Emerald wants her ship back, as she arms the various lasers on her ship and says that if Lars and his crew don't surrender, she's just gonna blow them up. Lars, when he hears this, though, just laughs in her face and says, "Go ahead, blow us up! Blow us up, I don't mind. Hell, Rhodonite, lower the shields!" And which, even Rhodonite's like, well, why would I do that? That'll leave us like sitting ducks, but Lars assures her that it'll be fine, and ultimately, yeah, they do lower the shields, and finally Emerald goes through under threat somewhat, and misses. Yeah, she fires her lasers, and while they damage the ship a bit, they don't blow it up. The ship... Sorry, soda coming up. The ship's totally fine. The engines are busted, and their weapons and shields are damaged, so they can't come back online. But but otherwise, the ship is intact, and that's because Lars banked on Emerald holding back, because this was her favorite ship, and in Lars's own words, it's her best friend. She'd rather let it get away than blow it up, which... Yeah, Emerald confirms she does love the ship too much to see it get destroyed. But that doesn't mean she's going to let them get away either, as she immediately wants to start blowing up their engines so they won't be able to fly anywhere anymore. As such, Lars calls Fluorite, who's the engineer for the ship, and asks her if she can get everything online, but in the meantime, they need to deal with Emerald and her weapons. And they actually do have means of getting through that, as they do have a miniature ship, which I think is called a Star Cruiser, but don't quote me on that. Or, I forgot. I should have wrote down the name. The point is, they have a little ship that one of them can pilot to go out there, and Lars is basically the ideal candidate since he's the right size for driving it. But the off-colors say they need him on board the ship. As such, Stevani volunteers their services and says that they can fly the ship, especially since if it's anything like a car, they'll be fine. As such, Lars goes along with this, and he sends Stevani down to the ship. And yes, guess what? It's like a car! As such, Stevani immediately flies out, and, well... they just start kicking ass. As they're using the ship's weapons, they're able to destroy each of Emerald's lasers one by one until eventually they're all gone. Unfortunately, though, as Stevani tries flying back to the sun... hold on a sec. Sorry, briefly forgot the name. But yeah, as Stevani flies the ship back to the sun incinerator, it turns out Emerald has more secrets up her sleeve, as she immediately launches missiles at Stevani's ship. And unfortunately, while Stevani is able to mostly dodge them, one sadly blows up in their ship's vicinity, and it starts flying out of control to a nearby planet. Which is where that episode ends and Jungle Moon begins, as unfortunately the damage to the ship is too much, and everything is going offline. Weapons, communications, shield, even the dashboard is the last thing to go, which is great comedic timing, because Stevani just starts yelling out, "Come on, ship, what's broken?" And the ship gives a schematic of everything damaged. And Stevani's like, "Oh, everything. Well, at least the dashboard still works," so then that cuts out too. So that's funny. But that's fun. That's kind of funny. But yeah, the ship ends up crashing onto this planet, and while Stevani does manage to make it out of the wreckage okay, thanks to throwing up a pink bubble, unfortunately, though, they are now stranded. While Stevani does try and go to the ship's radio to contact Lars and the off-colors, unfortunately, it's too badly damaged to send out a signal, so Stevani is kind of stuck. At first, Stevani starts kind of freaking out and wondering what the hell they're going to do, since they're trapped on an alien world with no means of getting off. But ultimately, they do kind of get some resolve because, well, this planet does seem to be teeming with life. After all, it's like a fucking jungle on here, and within their first minute on being on here, Stevani is attacked by an alien creature, which Stevani manages to take down easily by utilizing their sword, which, funny thing, how they end up taking out the alien is that they cut its head off, and the head immediately just grows new legs and walks away and leaving the body that Stevani cut off. So... yeah, alien life is weird. But either way, yeah, invigorated by this, Stevani realizes life clearly exists on this planet, or so, if they can live, so can I. So Stevani just pretty much spends the rest of the episode surviving, scrounging for food, trying to find shelter where they can, getting drinking water, kind of playing with some of the animals here and there, even setting up a makeshift shelter on the side of a mountain when a rain comes down. We also see that they need to shave, which makes sense. Steven needs to shave too. But point is, they're doing well for themselves, though it's clear they're on this planet for a while, as well, if you stay long enough to start forming a stubble, then it's clear you probably have been there for at least maybe a day or so. So, or maybe not a day, maybe a few days. I don't know. Point is, Stevani has clearly been stuck on this planet for a while, which also makes me believe that the crystal gems and Connie's parents are probably freaking the hell out, but let's not talk about them right now. We're here to talk about Stevani, and sadly, as Stevani stays on the planet, they sadly also need to figure out ways of getting food. Because while they are finding meat, because while they are able to get food through other means, like through fruit and through energy bars that Connie had packed, since part of the reason Devani is able to last so long is because Connie packed an entire survival pack for when she and Steven left. Well, they need to get their fiber from something, and sadly, that means they need to eat meat. So Stevani kind of starts going to war with themselves as they're debating trying to eat this cute little innocent creature, which I love. The Connie side is saying, no, we have to eat this thing, we need the fiber, while the Steven side's like, but it's so cute, it's adorable. Unfortunately, though, the alien creature they wanted to kill, it was a baby. And Mommy ain't exactly pleased to see this fleshy thing trying to eat its baby. So immediately the mother, who's exceedingly larger than Stevani, arrives and, well, tries to attack Stevani. As such, Stevani makes a run for it, but in the chase, Stevani ends up coming across this large structure in the jungle. As such, they end up running into the structure, and thankfully the big creature's too big to follow after them. But as Stevani kind of takes a breath and starts getting their bearings of this place, they notice something. The building looks a little familiar. While Stevani tries just brushing this off because obviously they haven't been here before, the feeling still is kind of strange. Though sadly, Stevani doesn't really have time to linger on this as they decide they need to get some rest. As such, they set up a hammock and decide to take a nap. And it's here we see what a fusion's dreams tend to look like. Because, like I said, one of the draws with fusion for me is when you take two completely different psyches and mix them together. As we've seen that with Garnet, as we see she's kind of she's kind of the middle ground between Ruby and Sapphire. We've seen that with the other gems fusions because the personalities we see are just what happens when certain traits of one gem are mixed with certain traits from another. And so likewise, that's one of the things we've also seen with Stevani, as they have Steven's happy-go-lucky attitude while kind of mixing with Connie's realism and brains. So now we're kind of getting something even stranger. What happens when two psyches mix together to create a dream? And we start to see that dream emotion as we see Stevani dreaming about being in Connie's home. Of course, because of the mix in psyches, a lot of the stuff that would have been Connie is Stevani. So like family pictures all have Stevani in her place, and likewise, there's still kind of the uncanny valley nature of the dream as Stevani ends up rising up through the carpet, and they're tiny, not even any bigger than the coffee table. And it turns out they're not the only ones to rise from the carpet, as immediately rising after them is Dr. Maheshwaran, who appears to be on the phone yelling at someone. Which, Stevani tries getting Dr. Maheshwaran's attention, but it doesn't do anything. She seems to ignore Stevani completely, which annoys Stevani something fierce. So as the good doctor starts walking away, Stevani starts following after. But what's of note is that Dr. Maheshwaran's dialogue doesn't exactly sound like something that a doctor on Earth would ever say. As she's yelling at someone about, yes, I know there's organic life down there. It's an invasion. I don't care. Just get rid of them, or I'll personally shatter you myself. Which, yes, something is a little off there. And so as Dr. Maheshwaran steps in the doorway of her home, Stevani immediately manages to use their floating powers to get up to the windowsill, yell at Dr. Maheshwaran, even jumps onto her shoulder, and we see a little bit of another strange sight. As when we look at Dr. Maheshwaran's eyes, they aren't human eyes anymore. They're yellow. The irises are yellow, and in place of the little and they have diamonds. And we see that the caller ID on her phone is Nephrite. Yep, this is what happens when we start seeing Steven's psyche mixed in, as it turns out that Stevani is having a diamond dream. As immediately after Dr. Maheshwaran hangs up the phone, the entire scenery just changes. As Stevani and Dr. Maheshwaran are no longer in Connie's home, but they're rather in a hub. In a way, which actually which resembles the moon base that we saw from several episodes prior. And we see that Dr. Maheshwaran now looks a lot more like Yellow Diamond. Like, she still has Dr. Maheshwaran's face and body and everything, but her clothes are now Yellow Diamond's clothes. Like, she has her hair, her suit, her gloves, everything. And the thing is, when she noticed Stevani, she just said, "Hold on, honey, I'm kind of working." And when she put her aside, she just sat back down and started going to work on pad. And we started to see that Stevani changes a bit too. While their appearance doesn't change, their demeanor changes, as immediately they shift from Stevani to someone else. I'm just going to kind of change gears here. What we're seeing here is a memory, or at least some kind of latent vision from a past time. Because as that part is clearly coming from Steven, while the inclusion of Dr. Maheshwaran and so forth is clearly coming from Connie. So, yeah, while the person we see before us may look like Connie's mother, it is in fact Yellow Diamond with her mother's face. So, for the duration of this dream, I'm just gonna call her Yellow Diamond. Stevani, with their new demeanor, runs up to Dr. Maheshwaran and immediately just starts calling her Yellow, Yellow, what you doing? And Yellow's all like, "Oh, you're still here." At which point she tries to shush Stevani off while she continues working, even going to this pad, and we see which she ends up which has this little opening thing where she can hit a few buttons which look like a diamond made up of 4 different diamond colors: white, yellow, blue, and pink. And hitting them in the right order opens up a communication feed to a ship, which Stevani sees this and goes starry-eyed, like, "What you doing there?" It's like, "I'm trying to contact the leader of my fleet." At which point Stevani's like, "Let me do it," and jumps up and starts messing with it, which causes Yellow to freak out and grab their arm and says, "Don't you dare touch that," which causes Stevani to kind of get a little upset. It's like, "Why not? You have so many colonies, so many planets. I should be, and I have none. I want to do something." And Yellow tells her no, she doesn't get all this, which Stevani starts throwing a tantrum as they start stamping their foot over and over on the chair, saying, "I want my own planet. I want my own colony. I want my own army. I deserve it. I'm just as important as you." And Yellow yells right back, "Then do something to earn it, Pink." Yeah. So, yeah. It's here we learn what role Stevani is playing in this memory. As Stevani goes away sulking and holding their arm where Yellow grabbed it, and as they look at it, they form their hand to a fist. They look in the glass, and the reflection staring back at them is not their own. And it's here, ladies and gentlemen, where we finally get the first appearance, so to speak, of Pink Diamond. As Pink Diamond balls her hand into a fist and then smashes her reflection in a fit of rage, which in turn causes Stevani to wake up kind of shaking. Of course, Stevani begins wondering what the hell that dream was, or at the very least the Connie side of them is, but Steven is able to recognize right away that was a diamond dream. Why the hell are they having a diamond dream? At which point Stevani starts realizing something. This place really is familiar. As such, they begin venturing further and further into the building, and guess what? It's a moon base. It turns out the world they landed on wasn't actually a planet. It was a moon. A very unique moon, clearly, but still a moon. And as Stevani climbs further and further up into the structure, once they get to the top, they can see out, and yeah, it turns out that just outside of the glass is a planet. A planet that has clearly seen better days. A good chunk of it has been hollowed out and kind of mined away. So, hold on a sec. And from here, it's clear that the whole place has been abandoned, and clearly so has this moon base, because even the building is being overgrown with plants and so forth. So yeah, it's very much clear that this planet has been abandoned for a while. Probably Like, odds are maybe Yellow tried to take this planet, but then at one point just said, you know what, fuck it, this isn't worth it, and then backed out. So yeah, this place is just empty and nobody uses it anymore. However, once Stevani realizes that this is a moon base, they realize they have an opportunity, as they end up going up to the big chair that Yellow Diamond was sitting at in their dream, and they manage to pull up the diamond screen that she was messing with in said dream, and thankfully they do remember the combination that Yellow Diamond used. Hold on a sec. Sorry, I wanted to change my lighting, but yeah, they remember the combination that Yellow Diamond used, and so using that, they're able to open up a new feed, and they're able to utilize the console functions on the ship of the building, which they get some ideas of like schematics, the local fauna or local flora in this place, and they even find a selfie a selfie that Yellow Pearl did of herself and Yellow Diamond, which I find hilarious. But thankfully, they managed to find a communication. They managed to find a communication feed straight to the Sun Incinerator, and so they're able to call Lars, who it turns out has been scouring the moon looking for Stevani. As such, Stevani's able to get in contact and let him know where they are, which they're thankful for. But before Lars and the Off Colors can go and get them, that's where the big monster outside comes in, as the monster has climbed the side of the building, looks inside and sees Stevani in there, and immediately just tries breaking through the glass. Thankfully, though, that's when Lars shows up and just starts blasting at the creature, and eventually decides, you know what, fuck it, this isn't worth it, as the creature jumps out the building and just flies away. As such, Lars kind of cockily says, "Well, look at that! I guess I saved you again." He tells Stevani, "Come on, let's get you guys back on board and back in my head." And Stevani is clearly happy to finally be able to go home, though they are still clearly shaken by what they're seeing, especially when the final shot of the episode is Stevani walking away, as we see the glass that Pink Diamond shattered. So yeah. That's where the episode ends. So, my thoughts on these episodes. First, let's talk about Lars of the Stars. In a general sense, this is a fun episode. Like, it's very much kind of sort of out of left field, just how weird it is. But it's a welcome kind of weird, in my opinion. I have heard criticism that it feels a little rushed to have Lars suddenly go from this pathetic guy who was just trying to get a grasp on what kind of a person he wanted to be, and then suddenly next time we see him, boom, he's a captain now, and he's an interplanetary outlaw who is just running from all these other gem generals who want his head on a pike. But in a different way, I find it fun. Like, the instant that Steven and Connie arrive on his ship and see him piloting it, it's clear we got ourselves kind of a space opera here. And just from the outset, you can tell everybody's having fun with this setup. Lars is clearly having fun being the captain and just kind of being all arrogant and such. We see the Alcohols just very much settling into their roles as the crew of the ship. And when Lars actually is in the zone, as it were, he's actually pretty fun to watch, as he's brash, cocky, overconfident, but also very much sure of himself and of his abilities. We see him actually acting tactically and smart when he actually is confronting enemies, like when Emerald shows up and threatens to blow up the Sun Incinerator if Lars and his crew don't surrender, and his response is just, go ahead, try it, knowing that Emerald's just bluffing because, well, they're flying her favorite ship, so there's no way in hell she's gonna let that get destroyed. So I like that. It's kind of funny, and the way it's showcased throughout these two episodes is honestly enjoyable. In a way, it kind of takes the best qualities that Lars had, in this case his cockiness and somewhat self-assured overblown confidence, and kind of funnels it into something positive, which in a way actually very much makes sense for Lars's character. While it is annoying that we didn't get to see this development going on, based on what we've seen of Lars throughout the series, where we see him now, in a way, actually kind of makes sense. After all, part of the reason why Lars was as shallow as he was when he lived on Earth was because he was so afraid of what other people would think of him if they knew certain facets of his personality. Like he was afraid of what they would think about him if they learned he liked baking. He was afraid of how people would think of him if they learned that he wasn't as cool as he made himself out to be. He was always acting in the way that he thought other people wanted him to be, and as a result of that, he was always constantly afraid of doing something stupid, which in turn learned led to him doing other things stupid. It led to him just ultimately running away from things rather than to them. And it isn't until we saw him get brought to space that he started undergoing character development, because he was finally put in a scenario where he couldn't think about what other people what thought about him. He had to think about survival, and above all else, he also had to think about his friends, his new friends, as he had to think of ways to try and make sure that everyone stayed alive. And in that environment, I can kind of see how this new personality would develop for Lars. Because here's the thing. If considering how Lars does when he's in the right environment, does actually believe in his own abilities, when he talked about, because while he was afraid of people learning he liked baking, when he actually baked, he was damn good at it. In a scenario where he's fighting for his life, I can actually see how this more overconfident side would start to blossom. Because imagine, if you were fighting for your life on an alien planet, constantly unsure of yourself, but then learning a little bit at a time that you had some advantages because of what you were. Gems and humans are very different species. While they can be somewhat genetically compatible, as we saw with Steven there, as he is an example of a union between a human and a gem, they are also two very different species. One is a light-based species who the center of their beings is a rock, while the other species is organic, fleshy, gooey, and gooey. And so in a way, that became Lars's advantage in the whole environment. And when Lars started netting more and basically in that like I said, when you throw Lars into that environment, it makes sense why he would probably get as far as he could. Because, like I said, when he's confident about his abilities, he does a great job. And so learning that he can do something that his friends couldn't, and realizing, okay, this rides on me, I gotta do it right, of course, suddenly there'd be more pressure. But then in the midst of that pressure, he starts succeeding. He starts coming up with strategies that ultimately aid him and his friends. We see him doing things that the off-colors couldn't do, and as a result, they start relying on him more, and he relies on them, and so we end up forming a mutual trust in that environment. But because the off-colors also are looking up to Lars so much because of what he can do, he starts feeling more sure of himself, and bit by bit, the better sides of him start coming out, and he starts realizing, I am good at this sort of thing. I'm actually great at this sort of thing. I want to keep going. I want to keep fighting. And so as a result, you can kind of see how the more unsure and scared Lars would start dissolving away, and this more confident, somewhat arrogant, but yet ultimately very competent Lars would take his place. Because this Lars was put in an environment where he had to fight for his life, was with people who accepted him no matter the situation, and whose lives depended on him. Throw all that together, and you got a recipe for a man who wants nothing more than to fight for those he cares about, and knows that no matter the strategy, he can make it out as long as he has these people by his side. I like that. It's actually good. Like I said, it would have been nice to see that development happen, but I think that this interpretation is actually a good one. But that also leads us to the character backsliding that we saw in the episode, where when Lars learned that Sadie had quit the Big Donut and joined the Cool Kids to form a band, like I said, in that moment, you see a bit of the old Lars coming out. The Lars who is angry at everything and more like, oh, come on, why don't I have that? Why is she living her best life while I'm stuck in space? That's definitely the old Lars there. But the difference here is not that Lars is angry that he's being left out. It's more the fact that life is going on without him. In Lars's head, he believed that things wouldn't change until he got back. He thought that life would be on Earth would kind of be on pause, that everyone would just be too busy missing him to get back. And in a way, that kind of would help encourage Lars to want to get back, because he wants to be there for his friends. He wants to rejoin them, especially with everything he's gone through. He wants to show them the new him. But then to learn that they don't miss him as much as he thought they were, and that they've all been living, and that they've just pretty much moved on and almost, and in a way, kind of maybe forgot about him, I can kind of see why he would backtrack a little. Again, these thoughts are ultimately wrong because, like Steven and Connie said, he shouldn't have expected life to just go on, or just the life to freeze until he got back. Things change, things move on, and like they said, Sadie needed an outlet to deal with all of her grief, knowing that Lars was stuck in space. So you can kind of understand why things would develop like that. But in a way, I feel like the backsliding here works too, because because it essentially kind of feeds into the stereotype that led Lars into wanting to change. Lars realizing that he was a pathetic loser who only hurt the people he loved. And Lars's own words, he thought that Sadie was probably moving on like she was to hurt him, to leave him behind, as payback for all the crap he pulled. He's in tears when he hears this, because he genuinely thought that, because when he learned all this, he was pretty much just thinking, they moved on without me. They don't even know, they don't even miss me. Imagine having that thought running through your head, that you thought that ultimately you weren't as important to your friends as you thought you were. And when that thought becomes more prominent, it can be self-destructive. It can lead to you having a total breakdown. We start to see that in Lars in the episode. And again, this showcases a bit why he has indeed changed. Because the old Lars would have just been angry and thought, why wasn't that me? Whereas this Lars looks at this and thinks, they don't need me. And I don't think they ever did. That would hurt like hell. And in a way, and yes, it's kind of backsliding and a bit egotistical, but what feeds it is not Lars trying to one up Sadie. It's Lars thinking he fucked up too much, and that ultimately he really does not matter. But it isn't until Steven and Connie give him a good kick in the pants and make him realize that, yeah, people are still worried about him, but they do need to live their lives, that his fears are ultimately unfounded. Because, yeah, people still do miss Lars. It's why his family made the freaking care package. And part of the reason Sadie even did what she did is because she needed something to focus on. She couldn't just live her life wallowing in self-pity waiting for Lars to come back. She needed to do something for herself. And she needed to do something good for herself. Hence why she did this. And as a result, yes, she still misses Lars, but she needs to live her best life, and she needs to live her best life, and even if she does that, she's still waiting for the day he can come home. And that's nice. That's legitimately nice. And when Lars kind of gets that through his head, it helps kind of bring out his better qualities again, as he realizes, yeah, you're right, I do need to let this go. It's good! I like it! Again, I know I'm getting probably more excited over this than I should, but it's nice to see character development sticking with this guy. Again, it's realistic for people to backslide into old habits, but for a TV show, seeing a character constantly need to relearn a lesson can get annoying. So, I am still gonna take it whatever I can get with Lars. So, I like that. It's nice. So mix all that together with some cheesy, fun space action, some legitimately cool star fighting, and overall, I think Lars of the Stars is a fun episode with some good character moments. It has good character moments, good action, some funny stuff. Overall, it's a nice episode and I enjoy it. As for Jungle Moon, I find this also be a good episode. It kind of does away with the cheesiness that we see in the previous episode, which again, it was good cheesiness. So don't harp on me for that. But in a way, it goes into a more serious territory by sticking Stevani into an isolated environment where they have no choice but to try and survive. And I kind of like that. And I kind of like that setup. I ultimately admit, I'm not one for survival stories. See this? It's my phone. I need this thing to survive. So I'll admit, I'm more a fan of sci-fi shows than natural stories, so to speak. I'm not one that I would rather watch an episode of Star Trek over an episode of Survivor. I would rather watch two guys with lightsabers duking it out than watch a story about someone trapped in the wild and needing to survive. That doesn't mean those stories are bad. It's just my personal preference. So Yeah, this episode does kind of get a little lower on the totem pole for me, but with that said, it's still a good episode. It's still a legitimately good episode. It's cool seeing Stevani. It's cool to have like essentially a one-man show with Stevani as the center. As well, most of the times we've seen Stevani, they have been important. While they have been an important character in certain events prior to this episode, it's nice to have an entire episode centered on them because like they are a unique personality. Sorry. And okay, and aside from their debut episode where Steven and Connie first formed them, to have an entire episode where Stevani has to survive, it's really interesting. It's actually pretty nice, as Stevani does showcase latent talents from both Steven and Connie as they attempt to navigate the jungle moon and find places and find forms of sustenance and food and so forth. It's honestly legitimately interesting, and I do like seeing it. And I do like seeing it, especially since we do kind of mix in some whimsy there, because you have to remember Stevani is a fusion between a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, so of course they're going to be a little silly with certain things. Like during one scene when they lean down into a river to get a drink of water, look across the river and see this other creature doing it, and Stevani, to try and play with them, starts blowing bubbles in the river, and the creature's response is to blow water into Stevani's face. It's cute. I like that. And again, the scene where Stevani is debating with themselves over eating this cute little animal is it's funny. It's just funny. Funny. So I like that. But the real meat of the episode, in my opinion, is what happens in the final act when Stevani finds the moon base. This one, going into there, we have the tension with Stevani being chased by the giant monster or whatever, but once they're inside, that's when things get trippy. And it all starts when Stevani lies down for a nap. I already mentioned the coolness factor of seeing a dream through a fusion's eyes, especially with Stevani. But what I like is that we see that kind of displayed in the dream, as at first it's mostly a Connie-oriented dream before shifting onto Steven's side of things, with having Dr. Maheshwaran take on the role of Yellow Diamond and Stevani taking on the mantle of Pink Diamond. But ultimately, it's very interesting lore as we see it interact as finally we get some characterization for Pink Diamond. Now again, I'm gonna ignore that a certain someone spoiled the twist with Pink Diamond. But with the whole mindset in place, this is probably one of the first instances we see of Pink Diamond's personality. And immediately we see that she's very different from Yellow and Blue. Even in this flashback, we see that Yellow is still just as business-oriented as she is in the present day. When she's talking to one of her commanders, she goes straight for the throat and pretty much just tells them either get this done or your ass is grass. She's straight and to the point, and she keeps it up throughout the whole thing. And when Pink Diamond keeps trying to get her attention, she just kind of brushes her aside, like, not right now, I'm working. And when Pink Diamond doesn't leave, she's like, oh god. Like, she clearly is trying to focus more on the job than her... I actually really don't know what to call Pink Diamond in relation to Yellow. Her sister? Her daughter? I don't know. I'm going to assume maybe it's like a surrogate parent deal, especially since Dr. Maheshwaran's taken on the role of Yellow Diamond in the dream. But I'm just going to assume... But... maybe it's like an maybe it's like a sibling situation with Yellow Diamond being the older sister and Pink as the younger sister. I have no idea. My point is this: I don't really know how to clarify. I don't know how to classify it, but it is a familial one to say the least. And whether it be parent and child or older sibling and younger sibling, Pink Diamond, we kind of just see that Yellow Diamond is just... while Yellow Diamond tolerates Pink, she is still mostly trying to focus on her work, with Pink essentially being like the little kid who wants to join in and basically see what mommy and daddy are doing. But then in that same token, we see that like I said, we finally get a bit of Pink Diamond's personality. And like I said, that's what my whole point was. Yeah, whereas Yellow Diamond is still business oriented, and Blue Diamond is a lot more serene and empathic, we see that Pink Diamond is childish. we see that Pink Diamond is more excitable, more happy, more trying to get in on the fun, wanting to be included in everything, but because of her status as essentially the youngest of the Diamonds, she's pushed aside. And we see that represented by Stevani in the dream, as, like I said, they're taking on the role of Pink here. As once when Yellow Mom tells Pink Stevani to pretty much fuck off and even yells at them when they try touching the thing, Stevani starts throwing a fit, which is like a little kid, as Stevani starts stamping their foot down over and over and over, saying, I want this, I'm just as important as you. And we see that and that's even further represented when, after Yellow tells Pink to fuck off and Pink goes away, immediately Pink's first response is to further prolong the tantrum by yelling and punching a window so hard it breaks. It's a very good tone setter for what kind of a personality Pink Diamond is. And Pink Diamond is essentially a fucking child. Like, Pink Diamond is spoiled. She's excited. Like, Pink Diamond is spoiled. She thinks she's higher than she really is, which in a way she is. She's a diamond, for crying out loud. Diamonds are supposed to be important. After all, as we've established, they're the highest on the totem pole in the gem hierarchy. So imagine being told that your whole life, even among your peers, you're treated like a small child, which I can understand that. But on that same token, Pink, within this little bit we see of Pink, we get the sense that she is immature. She isn't ready to be the leader of her own colony. And to have her response to when Yellow Diamond chews her out being, I'm just as important, and then finally punching a window when she's told no, it's, in a way, scary. In some ways, it kind of feels a little endearing because of how excitable she is. But you gotta remember, she's still a diamond. And while Blue Diamond, well, definitely, like, to kind of give a comparison, when we met Blue Diamond, in every one of her appearances, she seemed like more of the more calm and rational of the diamonds when compared to Yellow, as she wanted to listen to what people wanted to say and actually seem to communicate with them on an emotional level. But then you get indicators that she's just as much of a monster as her yellow sibling, as she very much frowns on being disturbed in any way, only wants to go through a courtroom procedure because she wants to make the burn hurt that much more when her perceived enemy finally gets the hammer brought down, and ultimately wants nothing more than to destroy anything that gets in her way. And we see that kind of reflected with Pink Diamond here in this brief little moment. Like, she seems excitable, she seems happy, she seems childlike. But on the flip side of that, she's spoiled, rotten, prone to throw tantrums, and when she doesn't get her way, she starts wrecking things. So immediately we get a tone setter for what this kind of character is. And knowing that Pink Diamond was the one in charge of the colony, it really starts to make you realize what kind of a character she truly was, and probably why she did need to be taken down a peg. So, yeah, I like that. It also adds a bit more mystery, too, because why is Steven having this dream? I mean, yes, Stevani is the one having it, but it's from Steven. Steven's the one clearly having the dream, and it's only being filtered the way it is because it's going through Stevani's mind. So why, pray tell, is Steven thinking of this dream? Why is it popping up in Stevani's mind like that? What is going on? It draws you in, and it makes you want to know more. And combined with the little snippet of Pink Diamond that we see in the dream, it makes you want to know more of the story. And it makes you want to know more about Pink Diamond. I like that. It's good stuff. And by the end, when Stevani finally does manage to get off the Jungle Moon with the help of Lars and the off-colors, you're left with a sour taste in your mouth. Yes, Stevani is going home and is probably going to go back to their lives as Steven and Connie, but we learned something that probably was not pleasant, and whatever the implications of learning that lesson are, they are not going to be good, and I love it. So, yeah, on the whole, I think Jungle Moon is still a good episode. Again, it's not high on my totem pole of episodes because it's essentially a survival episode, But again, that's just my personal bias. That doesn't mean the episode is bad, it just means that I've got a bias. So, while it isn't a bad episode, and it is kind of interesting to see Stevonnie just utilize their skills to survive the Jungle Moon, what really draws me in is what happens in the final act when Stevonnie has their dream of yellow and pink diamond. The implications are interesting, and the final bit of tension that we see at the end with the dream definitely makes you wonder where things are going to go from here. I love that. So on the whole, enjoyable episode, but not one of my favorites. So yeah, like I said, Lars and the Stars, good cheesy fun with some great character stuff for Lars and so forth. And then likewise, Jungle Moon, well, being a good episode in its own right, again, is not really high on my totem pole because, like I said, not a big fan of survival stories. So overall, two good episodes, both enjoyable. So yeah, that's about it. I thank you for watching the episode. Thank you for watching this video. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll hopefully see you next week. As we get some more Earth-based adventures. Well, one Earth-based adventure. The other one actually goes back to space, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So till then, I hope you have a good evening, and as always, take care.